In a small corner store, an ordinary salesman faces three thugs to protect a strange girl. No one expected that the girl was Victoria Harper, a millionaire who holds power in her hands, power and immense wealth. That brief encounter sparked a special relationship where courage and kindness inadvertently opened the door to opportunity and love. But will one? Can an ordinary man and a millionaire woman find common ground between two very different worlds? Welcome to Kindness Stories, where small acts light up big hearts. Today, let's explore an inspiring story of courage and unexpected love between an ordinary salesman and a powerful millionaire woman. Winter in the city always brings with it a chilling cold. Snow falls lightly like pure white cotton, covering the sidewalks with a soft layer. The yellow streetlights cast halos on the ground. The sound of car horns in the distance mingles with the sound of hurried footsteps. Inside a small corner grocery store, Ethan Miller was clearing the last of the shelves. The white light from the fluorescents overhead cast a chilly glow, reflecting the metal shelving. Ethan, wearing a thick coat, quickly arranged the boxes of cookies. He sighed softly. Only 15 minutes until closing, he told himself, glancing at the clock on the wall. The automatic glass door suddenly slid open. A cold wind blew in, accompanied by the sound of high heels clicking on the floor. Ethan turned around. Entering the store was a young woman, about 30 years old, wearing a luxurious white fur coat. Her face was sharp, her fair skin stood out under the light, her long wavy black hair swayed slightly with each step she took. Ethan thought to himself, she doesn't seem like the type of person to stop by a small shop like this. But he remained polite, nodded slightly and said, "Good evening, our shop is about to close, but if you need anything, I can help." The woman glanced at him. Her eyes were a bit indifferent, but her voice was not too cold. Just a few bottles of mineral water and some snacks. Ethan nodded, continuing to arrange the shelves but still glancing at her from a distance. The girl moved slowly, her eyes scanning the shelves, but her expression showed no sign of being in a hurry. Suddenly, a loud noise came from outside the glass door. Ethan looked up and immediately recognized three young men standing outside, laughing and talking loudly. From the way they were dressed, black leather jackets, ripped jeans, and their eyes darting from side to side, Ethan knew they weren't decent people. More people entered. "Look who it is, a doll from a magazine." A tall, platinum blonde man walked up to the glass door, smiling. His eyes were fixed on the woman. The two women immediately recognized each other. The woman remained calm, her feet walking straight towards the counter. But when the three thugs also started to enter the store, Ethan clearly felt the atmosphere change. "Hey, beautiful, what are you buying? Let us help you carry it." The platinum-haired guy laughed loudly, blocking the path. The other two guys also stood on either side, their eyes full of provocation. Ethan set down the box of cookies and took a deep breath. "This can't happen in my store." "What do you guys need? The store is closing soon." Ethan stepped out from behind the counter, trying to keep his voice calm but firm. He stood between the three thugs and the woman. "Defense," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice level and calm. The three men looked at each other, then burst out laughing. "Well, look who it is. Our hero has appeared." The silver-faced man stepped forward, his chest brushing Ethan's shoulder. "Go away, kid, before you get into trouble." "He made it clear, you guys go," the woman said coldly from behind Ethan. Her voice was as sharp as a knife, her eyes showing no fear. This girl, so arrogant? Another guy raised his chin to look at her. Ethan saw that the situation was getting worse. Without thinking, he raised his hand and pointed towards the door. "The police are patrolling nearby. Do you want to try your luck?" The three men looked at each other, smirked, and then backed away. The silver-haired one gave Ethan one last look. "We'll let you off this time." Not sure about next time, hero." He gestured to his throat with his finger and left. The glass door closed automatically. Silence. The woman walked up to the counter, placing her bag on the counter, her eyes still on Ethan. "Aren't you scared?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with surprise. "Just 3 troublemakers," Ethan shrugged. "Anyone would do it anyway." "No, not everyone does." She smiled for the first time all evening. "You're braver than you think." A week later, Ethan started a new job at a larger supermarket downtown. The work was more stressful, but the pay was better. Every day, he was busy with hundreds of customers, scanning barcodes, sorting products, and handling various requests. That day, around mid-morning, as Ethan was arranging the vegetable stand, a familiar voice rang out behind him. "Do you still like standing in other people's way, like last time?" Ethan turned around. Standing there was none other than the woman from the day before. But this time she wasn't wearing a white fur coat. Instead, she was wearing a long beige coat and stylish sunglasses. He was surprised, but quickly smiled. "The store is bigger, but the people are the same," Ethan joked, moving the crates of vegetables out of the way to give her a path. She smiled and took off her sunglasses. "So, you changed jobs?" "Yeah, they pay better here," Ethan replied. He bent down to finish sorting the vegetables. "And you? No one causing trouble today?" "No one has dared to try," she raised her eyebrows, her eyes mischievous. "Excuse me," she said, her voice rising in tone. She picked a few red apples and put them in her bag, but before she left, she stopped and looked up at Ethan. "I'm Victoria, by the way." "Ethan," he replied, smiling slightly. "Ethan," she repeated, as if testing the sound of the name. "Thanks for last time. If I get the chance, I'll buy you a meal." "Sure, I won't refuse this time," Ethan said, his eyes still on the vegetable box. Victoria left, but her smile lingered in Ethan's mind. There was something about her both distant and strangely familiar. This time, Ethan didn't need anyone to remind him. He also knew that this wouldn't be the last time they would see each other. As time went on, Ethan and Victoria saw each other more often. Every time Victoria went to the supermarket, she tried to talk to Ethan. At first, it was just a few casual questions about the weather or small things. But gradually, the conversation became deeper, steadying. A weekend afternoon, the pale sunlight shines through the large glass windows of the supermarket. Inside, the atmosphere is quite quiet as there are fewer customers than usual. Ethan is checking the candy shelves when he hears a familiar voice behind him. "Guess what? I have a present for you today." Victoria's voice was soft but filled with excitement. Ethan turned around, surprised. "A gift? Did I do something to deserve one?" Victoria held up a small blue paper bag containing 2 chocolate muffins. "No reason needed. Sometimes people give gifts just to make others happy." She took another sip of her wine and looked at the people around her, smiling and following the table. Ethan looked at the bag of cookies, hesitated for a second, then smiled and took it. "Thanks. This is probably the most unexpected gift I've received this week." They both laughed. "Are you taking a lunch break? I know a coffee shop nearby," Victoria offered, her eyes slightly raised, her gaze waiting for an answer. Ethan glanced at his watch. He still had 30 minutes before he had to be back at work. "I thought I could use some time," he replied. Cafe scene. A small, cozy cafe with soft, yellow lighting. Jazz music plays from speakers mounted on the wall. Ethan and Victoria sit across from each other. In front of them are 2 steaming cups of cappuccino. "How long have you been doing this?" Victoria asked, stirring her coffee. "About 3 years," Ethan replied. looking out the window at the busy traffic outside. It was just a temporary job at first, but I kept doing it, maybe because I hadn't found what I really wanted to do yet. "Don't you have any dreams?" Victoria asked, tilting her head curiously. "Yeah," Ethan said, pausing as if to think. "I wanted to open my own little store, a fresh produce store. People could come in and buy fresh produce, fresh baked bread every morning. That was my dream, but the dream didn't pay the bills." Victoria smiled, stirring her coffee slowly. "I don't think your dream is so bad. Many people have a lot of money, but don't know what they want. At least you know what you need." Journal chuckled. "You have so much trouble realizing that." "What about you?" Ethan asked back. "You certainly have everything, but I get the feeling you're still searching for something." "What?" Pausing, Ethan thought back. Victoria was a little surprised, not expecting him to see through her like that. She sighed. "That's right. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy peace of mind. Sometimes I get tired of relationships that revolve around work and money." The two were silent for a moment, as if each was lost in their own thoughts. Ethan sipped his coffee, his eyes filled with determination. "Anyway, I still believe that good things come to good people." I felt something purchase on my shoulders and turned to see Tim. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, then smiled slightly. "I think so too." From that moment, an invisible thread began to bind them together. Setting. A cold morning, pale light piercing through the gray sky. Ethan stands at the checkout counter, smiling at the customers. Little does he know, today is the day of trial that awaits him. A man in a black suit, who appeared to be a senior manager, approached Ethan. He stood with his arms crossed, his face solemn. "Ethan, I need to talk to you," he said briefly. Ethan followed him into the back office. The air in the room was stifling. "We've received reports that you're getting too close to some VIP clients," the manager said slowly but authoritatively. "This is a professional work environment. You can't just casually talk to someone as if you were meeting a friend." "What do you mean? I'm just doing my job," Ethan replied, trying to keep his cool. "You know who I'm talking about. Victoria Harper." The manager emphasized each word. "She's a VIP. If she's not happy, we'll lose the client." "Can you trace her?" asked Gentry, looking at her. "She didn't complain," Ethan said, his voice firmer. "If you think it's wrong to talk to guests, you've misunderstood me." "Don't be stubborn, Ethan. This is a warning. If you don't change, I'll be forced to take stronger measures." Ethan left the office, his heart heavy. Scene. "You look tired." She noticed immediately that Ethan was different. "Just a bad day," Ethan replied. Victoria looked into his eyes as if she understood what had happened. "I have a proposition. If you are willing, I can help you make that dream come true." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your fresh produce store," she said, her eyes lighting up. "I can invest. You have the talent, you have the dream. I have the resources. Why not?" Ethan was stunned. "You want to invest in my store?" Mac nodded. "Not a gift, but an investment," Victoria replied. "We could be partners. I just help you get started." "Thanks, but I don't want to burden anyone," Ethan said, his eyes showing his pride. Victoria placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Nobody is a burden to anybody. This is an opportunity, and I think you deserve it." And Franklin, grand gulp, had lifted his head. He looked at grandmother, still calling for her, to tell her to come home to rest after her long quest had been failure. Ethan was silent, his eyes thoughtful. He didn't want to accept help, but Victoria's words moved him. "Okay," Ethan nodded, "but I'll pay it all back, every penny." Victoria smiled, her eyes full of confidence. I have no doubt about that. The story begins to turn a new chapter. Ethan not only gets closer to his dream, but also realizes that sometimes accepting help is not a sign of weakness. As for Victoria, she finds something that money can't buy: a sincere relationship and someone who can share her dream. The two walked in the snow, each step leaving traces on the white road, but in their hearts, what remained was the warmth of faith, of new beginnings. The morning sun was shining brightly on the small street. The Green Haven store, a fresh food store co-founded by Ethan and Victoria, was located on a busy corner, highlighted by a hand-carved wooden sign and potted plants along the awning. Large glass doors on the outside allowed people to see into the cozy store, with shelves of fresh produce, fragrant baked breads, and a colorful juice bar. Ethan stood behind the counter, wearing a brown apron with the Green Haven logo embroidered on the chest. His face lit up with a confident smile. His hands quickly arranged the plump red apples on the display shelves. The store air was filled with the natural scent of vegetables and warm bread. "Ethan, I need another bag of lettuce," called out Grace, a regular elderly customer. "Right here, Grace," Ethan replied loudly, quickly grabbing a bag of fresh green lettuce from the cold storage in the back and handing it to her. "You are a talented young man," Mrs. Grace smiled, her eyes filled with satisfaction. "Your shop is getting more and more popular." "I'm just lucky to have good customers like you," Ethan replied, smiling. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just luck. It was his own hard work and Victoria's trust. In the back of the store, in the kitchenette, Victoria sat in front of her laptop, checking the sales figures. She wore a white shirt and black slacks, her hair tied back in a bun. Her face was calm, her eyes focused on each number that appeared on the screen. Ethan walked in, wiped his hands on his apron, and sat down beside her. "How are the sales?" he asked, leaning over to look at the screen. Victoria smiled slightly, leaning back in her chair. "Better than expected. If this continues, you might be able to pay off my loan sooner than planned. Don't fear that your finances won't be tied to my loan." Ethan curled his lips, half smiling, half serious. "I told you, I'll pay every penny." Victoria turned to look at him, her eyes soft and proud. "I never doubted that, Ethan." They sat in silence for a few seconds, but this silence was not awkward. It was a moment of understanding. "Do you ever think about what happened?" Victoria asked suddenly. "If you hadn't helped me out in the grocery store that day, we probably would have never met again." Ethan nodded, squinting thoughtfully. "We never know the results of good deeds, do we? But I think I'll do it anyway." Victoria chuckled, "And I'll still come back to thank you." They both laughed, their eyes met, warm and deep. A week later, the storm of rumors hit. It's a broad day, and before the hotel leads the world. That morning, Ethan received a phone call from Sam, one of his old supermarket friends. "Hey Ethan, have you read the paper?" Sam's voice came urgently over the phone. "Newspaper? No, I'm too busy," Ethan replied as he sorted vegetables onto the shelves. "There's news about you and Victoria Harper all over the internet." "What?" Ethan frowned, pausing in his work. Sam continued, his voice full of excitement. They wrote, "Salesman wins the heart of millionaire woman. People are talking everywhere." And Ethan stood frozen. He felt a chill run down his spine. A few minutes later, Victoria walked into the store, magazine in hand. She didn't look surprised, but a little tired. She turned to him with a grin. "Here," she sighed, holding the newspaper out to Ethan. On the cover was a picture of the two of them standing together in front of the store, the headline in bold, "The love story of a salesman and a millionaire woman? Love or just an investment?" Ethan stared at the photo, his heart clenched. "They think I'm with you for your money." "It was inevitable," Victoria said softly. "The media always likes to exaggerate things. But you know I don't believe that." "What about the customers?" Ethan frowned. "They might think I'm just an opportunist." Victoria put her hand on his shoulder, squeezing gently. "Ethan, people who really know you would never believe those rumors." Her eyes were steadfast, just like the first day she stood before him and said she believed in his dream. A month later, the rumors died down, but customer confidence did not. Inside the store, the flow of people was still brisk. Ethan and Victoria's little shop was growing. Customers were coming not just for fresh vegetables or baked bread, but for a sense of belonging, a sense of being welcomed like family. A little boy about 6 years old pulled his mother's hand into the shop, his eyes shining at the sight of the golden croissants. Ethan smiled, leaned down, and asked the boy, "Want to try a cake, kid?" The boy looked up at Ethan, nodding vigorously. Ethan carefully wrapped the cake and handed it to him. "Free?" the mother asked in surprise. "Just a little gift for our youngest customer today," Ethan smiled. The mother smiled gratefully. The boy took the cake, his eyes sparkling with joy. Standing from a distance, Victoria watched silently. Her heart suddenly felt strangely warm. This was the reason she invested in Ethan, not for profit, but because she saw in him kindness, something this world always needed more of. She walked over and stood next to Ethan. "If you keep giving away free bread, this store will go out of business," she teased. "Oh, you're the investor," Ethan half joked. "Besides, sometimes people need to be reminded that kindness still exists." "Oh, you're right," Victoria said softly, her eyes on the boy who was laughing heartily beside his mother. Ethan and Victoria not only built a successful store, but also forged a deep relationship based on trust and kindness. From a chance encounter, they went through hardships together and found something that money can never buy: love, faith, and a spiritual home for those searching for hope in life. Happiness is not only about achieving your dreams, but also about the kind things you do every day. Today's story shows us that kindness can change a person's destiny. Never hesitate to do good, because you never know what miracles are waiting ahead. Please like, share, and follow Kindness Stories to spread more warm stories like this.